Tonight I was in the midst of beautiful company, Mandy Weiner, the Marawa family, footballers past and present, football administrators, coaches, sports people in general, all of whom have gathered tonight to come and say, well done to Robert Marawa for having taken the opportunity to tell his own story.
Wow, Rob, remember those days where you used to say, "Grimshelele boy," but on the other hand, you're the one that actually mentored me to be the best analyst at Super.
It's a unique evening, very special, and not only to Robert, but to us as well. Because one thing that all of us need to get in our heads is that leaders are readers.
I just got myself a copy, bought it, mind you, so you go out there and buy your copy as well. I'm excited to see Robert celebrating himself. I'm excited to see him do something new and, pave new paths for himself in his life.
Elijah Teta Masombunga used to say, Shamazamba in Orlando Stadium. And Ghost Khateb is the one who made the term Latum very, very popular. And Philip Mangete is one. That was Mangete. And then Joe Hutla used to say, yes, when it is goal. And Baba Mteta would go, Hawi, Banna, Hawi. And a certain boy from Nkandla just said it. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Victor Ramatisile, and I have the honor and privilege of being program director tonight. I don't know what I've done to deserve this honor, but the Sesotho, ha mudimo are kitla romamangna, when our dumela fella romarena romanna. As I said, today we are launching a book that was penned by the renowned journalist, about whom I will talk at length a little bit later in the day, covering the life and times of a certain Robert Kennedy Temba Marawa Shelele. A very shy and unassuming young boy, born and bred in rural KZN in a place called Nkandla. Went to many institutions, including Little Flower. At some point, ended up at Hilton. And ended up at Wits University. A story that we all hope will inspire many a black child, many a black African child, who might find themselves in circumstances that are less favorable, but who understand that education, determination, grit, and I might add, parental support is ever so important in making our children achieve their dreams. I don't want to say much about what is happening in the book, and I'm going to steal a lot of moments to answer a lot of questions that I have for Robert and Mandy around the contents of the book. I still feel that Robert doesn't tell us much about women in that book, but we'll talk about it. Well, you can only prove me wrong, but this is not about me, it's about Robert, it's about Mandy. And without much ado, I'm going to call upon Terry Morris from the Penn Macmillan, who are the publishers of the book, to come and say a few words before we unleash our host to tell us more about some of the stuff and the anecdotes and unpack some of the interesting parts of the book. Terry.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. A special welcome to the Marawa family, to Premier Lesifi. Wonderful to have you here, and all esteemed guests, all protocol observed. But it really is great to have you all here on a very chilly, high-felt evening. The weather might be cold outside, but the reception for Robert Marawa's book, as told to Mandy Weiner, has been off the charts sizzling. Within a few days of us releasing the pre-release video, it's been viewed 60,000 times, and with much delight and cheering about the announcement of the book. Publishing, as some of you will know, is not a short game. Our paths crossed with Robert over the years, but as his grueling schedule and commitments grew and the demands from his loyal 1.3 million, who has that, social media followers rose, he naturally became much more difficult to pin down. Enter Mandy Weiner, no stranger to South Africans as a fearless journo, a best-selling author, and not one to take no for an answer. Mandy chipped away at Robert, convinced he had to tell his unique story. COVID and various dramas in 2020, all contained in the book, outside for sale, from Exclusive Books, don't go home without one, led to reflection time, and finally in 2021, Robert agreed to do the book. Mandy has done an outstanding job once again managing to draw Robert into places and memories that he wasn't sure he wanted to go. And her professionalism meant we could get this book out to all South African readers and fans ahead of the much-anticipated Soccer World Cup in a few weeks, which will no doubt keep Robert incredibly busy over the next month. Mandy, thank you once again for being an incredible partner and author to Pan and to Robert. Robert, you're a humble and gentle giant, and you have stayed true to your dreams. You've overcome a myriad of obstacles, both personal and professional, and you've come out fighting every single time with millions in your corner. Your deep respect for the industry of sports journalism, the legendary players and coaches and fans, has meant that we spent many hours ensuring names were spelled correctly, nicknames were absolutely correct. Thank you for allowing us to publish your story and for bringing your signature voice to the page this time. South Africans need to tell their stories and to celebrate them, and Robert's is a great one. You won't be disappointed. A quick thank you, I have to quickly do this, to the incredible Pan team. They didn't bat an eye when we got carried away and made them set up a video in the FNB Stadium to announce the book with drone shoot. There are 27 of them. A big thank you to them all. Eileen has worked tirelessly tonight, and everyone from the team. But a major thank you also to Mum Felicia and Tisa. Most of you will know here tonight, a legend in the industry, and her M Sports Marketing team, and Tlohi Ngwato, I don't know if Tlohi's here, for partnering with us on bringing Robert's book to the world. To the Houghton Hotel and staff, to Verve Kliko, Glenn Morangi, it's been wonderful to have you as partners. And I'm handing over the baton to our booksellers tonight, who are going to draw the customers in. We have Exclusive Books here tonight partnering with us. They're selling the book. And I urge you to read it, buy it, share it, and enjoy the evening. Thank you.
Now to the book. Before I allow, as the program indicates, an interaction between Robert and Mandy, Mandy has been typecast pretty much. In fact, when I first learned that she had written Robert's book, I was quite perplexed, because she has been typecast as somebody who writes books about criminals, Lolly Jackson, Radador Crasher, and controversial books like, is it Jackie Silibi's book was also written by?
Who was the person who released him?
Pardon me? Did you hear the question? Jackie Silibi, the late, bless his soul, was released by a medical parole board that was chaired by none other than yours truly. And when at him, as Mike Mangena fondly refers to you, why did you refuse the first attempt? I know it was a DM, and many people don't respond positively to DMs, by the way. Why did you snub the people in the first place?
I don't know. I don't think it was snubbing. It was more, do I really need to write a book? But at the same time, I probably was scared because of exactly what you've just mentioned about Mandy's reputation. You know, so if you're going to be likening me to the relevant creatures of this world, then I needed to check my own history and see if do I fit that history or not. But also maybe it wasn't the right time. maybe I hadn't been hospitalized enough yet to realize that maybe at some point I would need to do it. I mean, we'll chat later about some of the people that motivated me to write the book. But it made sense because there's always I think Mandy just used the word, an underbelly of events. Because you can't be in the prime of your career, you can't be achieving what you achieve, but also be very fireable. Does that make sense? It doesn't. So I think that's where she comes in.
Well, because I'm going to leave the two of you to talk among yourselves, but I'll always take this opportunity before we do that. Every time I'm given an opportunity to speak, Robert, or to write something, I always have a regret that, I should have mentioned one or two things. Sounds familiar? Is there anything that you think in the book, after going through it, you say, wow, maybe I should have said one or two?
I don't think so. She was very tough with me. Because remember, I had to now play a role that I'm not very familiar with. I'm usually the Mandy.
So you're on the other side of the microphone.
So now I'm on the other side. You know,
I've been the other side of the stethoscope many times, don't worry. So.
Well, I'm glad we're all human. So I think with a bit of push, because remember, if I had to talk about relationships, it was on the back of a journalist from a tabloid. I called them trashbloids at the time, but I was on the other end of that. So I almost always seemed to be forced to be defensive about something that they were already going to write anyway, whether I talked to them or not. So when I did respond on the relationship issues, she would always say, no, you're giving me a surface answer. We need you. Then I'd have to remember that, I'm actually writing my book through her and her expertise. So she was able to guide and say, no, we need a little bit more from you. We need more heart. We need more humanity. We need you to be a bit more emotional. Switch on that. And that took a bit of time, but I think what you get as a final product is indeed my raw, very, very bare, to the bone, me, in terms of every topic. So I don't think there was anything that I left out. About the two broadcasters in Auckland Park and Randburg, they would need individual books, and that is not possible.
I know that Kamwende tried to get into that this morning in the interview that you had on Morning Live, and we are not going to take the bait, but that's fine. What is the most difficult part of writing this book?
Are you interviewing me?
No, I'm just asking.
Writing a book is difficult. People don't always appreciate how grueling it is, how long it takes. We spent hours and hours and hours here in this hotel over a lot of sushi and sparkling water, and it takes a long time. So I really had to sit down with Robert and probe and ask questions. And he's right about not giving me the detail and me having to push back. I think you once said that you were disappointed when your relationship broke up. And I was like, disappointed? What is disappointed? Like, use your words, describe your feelings. And that was the difficulty, was to really, really push him to describe what he was feeling. And all of that takes time and to earn trust as well. You know, that's to encourage him to be able to open up and to speak.
He claims and he describes himself as somebody who doesn't show much emotion, even with extreme provocation or frustration. Doesn't show much emotion. Is that what you found in your personal dealings with him?
Guilty as charged. I think there were a few times where I literally stood up at the table and I put my hands on my head and I said, are you joking? Is that really how you're going to describe this? Because he was so muted in his descriptions. But I think we got there in the end. I forced him to really introspect, and although he downplays it, he's a man of massive integrity, but also a man who loves his family immensely. And I think the way that he describes that above all is very profound in the book.
Okay, I'm going to be the fly on the wall now. I'm going to leave the two of you to conduct your discussion as planned, and then I'll come back after a few minutes. So I'll leave it to both of you now to tell us more about the goings on, how the book has been received, the creation of the book, and general frustrations and otherwise, and matters to celebrate, and moments to celebrate in the whole process in general.
Thank you so
I'll leave
much.
it for a few minutes.
Managing Robert is like herding cats a lot of the time. So thank you to your team and everyone around you as well for ensuring that we got to this point. Some people are guilty, some would argue, of publishing their memoirs too early in their lives. Some people don't wait long enough. Do you think it was the right time? Do you think that there's more to come? You could have waited longer?
No, not at all. I think it was the right time. Did I think at the age of 35 I'd have my first heart attack? No. And that could have been the end. What would I have left behind? Whatever was written about me. Would that be the truth? The answer is no. So if that is not the truth, then who's going to tell the truth on your behalf? So I think all of those were moments that reawakened the need to take charge. Because the journey is difficult. I mean, you get into broadcasting, it's not an easy ride. You don't just get in and be front of the queue overnight. You know, so you don't want to downplay the sacrifices that you've put into your journey to be where you are. And I really think there would have been no better time than now, towards the end of 2022. And we finally got it. Whatever is still to come will come through. There'll be a volume 2.
There'll be about who's writing it.
Good luck.
So we spent a lot of time, mostly Tuesday afternoons, at the restaurant here in this hotel, where the waiters and waitresses were incredibly hospitable. How was that process for you, honestly, of having to sit down and expose yourself and reflect? Because in a way, it was very cathartic. Like, there was stuff that you were dealing with that perhaps you hadn't dealt with in years.
The process itself is, I mean, it's difficult. People think you just sit down, you write a book, and you send it out. And it's not. You have to be very reflective. You've got to be very honest. You've got to be very open. You almost got to, and I think Doc mentioned that it's a very easy read. It's a readable book. I mentioned this morning on Morning Live with my always that and I mentioned it with Pan Macmillan when we started having the conversations and trying to describe who I think I am in the bigger scheme of what the public sees you as Robert. And all I described, and I'm glad Bertie's here because I used his stadium. I mean, he's the boss at stadium management, you know, all the major stadiums around the country, including FNB. And I said, my life, in terms of describing it, I use FNB as the analogy. So when I write a book, I don't use bombastic words. I leave that to my friend, Steve Kompela, who's here. So when he writes the book, I leave him to do all of that. So I said mine has been a very, so going back to FNB Stadium, you're sitting in the extra strong. You must be able to read the book from cover to cover and be okay with it. I'm literally putting you in a journey. Get into the car. Let's drive on the N3. You know, obviously be careful of the trucks, but let's drive on the N3. Let's have a conversation. Then the next layer is you have your people that sit in the suites. So those are your professional people, tie-wearing individuals, professionals, chartered accountants, lawyers, you name it. And then you get your presidential suite, you know, your politicians, you get your judges, you get all sorts of individuals but they must all relate to the story in a very humane way. And none of them must miss a beat of what the story is about. So we kept it at that, very simple, very readable, but it was about the details so that it is honest. And it's not a repetition of things that we've spoken about before or that's been written about. So Yeah, I really think, Mandy, in summary of what you're saying, the journey to the Houghton Hotel on a Tuesday, you also needed to get into a certain energy because there are things work-wise that will stress you. You don't want to bring your stress into a book. So you almost have to wipe clean a slate to say, here now, I am addressing people that I need to make them understand. Also to a kid that has dreams and ambitions that wants to do something that they believe in or have a gift in or a talent in, pursue it. Don't wait for anybody.
So I know everybody wants to know, like, the beans and the dirt in the book, right? Like, the tabloids have already gone there, that you've spilled the beans. But for me, what I was most interested in, actually, was your formative years and what made you as a person. And the color of that, which I think really comes through in the book. So the story is about growing up in Kandla and how you had to kick a ball against a wall by yourself, about how you had this little radio at Little Flower and everyone would gather around it on a Saturday to listen to games. The stories about your mother keeping clippings for you, all of that stuff that made you into the broadcaster, who you are today and the human being that you are today. I think that actually for me is the most interesting part of the book.
No, it is. And she is here. And I think maybe on behalf of me, my journey, and everybody else that has come through, just to give a very warm, welcoming round of applause to a lady who is my mother. I had to bug her to record on a VHS tape games. I mean, she had her own things to do. She had no business trying to record games that were in itself not even HD. I mean, this was farm reception where you could hardly see, you could kind of make out what's going on here. It was the aerial shifted, the wind has taken it somewhere else. So, but she did that religiously. She recorded all those games. And I got stacks of those VHSs. Whatever games, guys, that have been lost by the SABC archives, I probably have them. All thanks to her. So she did that. And then, so remember when we got newspapers? So if there was a Monday Sowetan, the Monday Sowetan would arrive on Wednesday. And then Tuesday, so it worked out in a messed up way. But she made sure that those Sowetans, those city presses are stacked up. And when I came back, remember we went home 4 times a year. This half-term and whatever kids do nowadays was foreign to us. And every time I would go back, I would then take the stack of newspapers and rearrange them from newest to oldest. So the newest one would be at the bottom. That's the last one I read. So this is like 2 months worth of papers to go through. But because I was so fascinated by the sport called football, and I wanted to know the names, know the characters, know who they were, I took the time and I read them. Every single day I would go through 3 or 4 a day. So the pile gets lesser and less and less until I finished them until the next term. But she did that. She religiously did that. How, I don't know. Maybe once or twice, instead of recording the game, she would record Vili Vali or something. And I'll be like, hey, okay, she's made a mistake. She's human. So let it be. But in the main, she got 98% as far as the recording is concerned. And I'm grateful for that because otherwise I would not have known. For me, detail, and that is what has stressed my desire for research. If you're going to be involved in broadcasting, everybody knows football. Everyone knows football. They got opinions about football. They know football. But what about football when you're broadcasting leaves an element that makes people to go home and say, what did he say? And then you cause a debate. Oh, so Thierry Henry scored his 98th goal, but it was the first one he scored with his head. Interesting. So little nuggets that cause talkability became important to me because otherwise, Isha we Chiefs, or Isha we Pirates, okay. But you get people to start thinking, enjoying the game, making a little bit of fun, and that's why we had things like Mumish of the Week. But it was all as Mandy says, that journey, how it began, and I'm glad there's former Little Flower people here, because they know that was a school, but it was a school plus. It was not ordinary, it was tough. And if you could go home and get some form of relief from the game and what the game brought, was just magical.
And that's why you're number 196 from Little Flower. So the trick about these interviews, right, is that I don't want to give too much away, because we really want you to go buy the book. And just to dispute what you were saying, Doc, there's a story about a certain soap lady and the Holiday Inn, a soap advert lady, and the Holiday Inn in Hillbrow. It's in the book. You can go and read it. I won't say anything because Robert's mother's here, but go read the book. But before I hand over to you, I want him to tell one story that's in the book, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think the story I want you to tell is the story about you and John Barnes going to the World Cup, to the opening game of the 2010 World Cup.
It was John Barnes, eh?
Oh, yeah, it was John Barnes.
Yeah.
No, John Barnes. John
Yeah.
Barnes.
John Barnes, the legend. So I'm a big Liverpool fan. Everybody knows that. And as part of my duties at SuperSport is to anchor 2010 World Cup. It's on African soil. It's on South African soil. I have no idea who I'm going to be working with, but, you know, there's John Barnes being thrown my way. An honor, a privilege. But we get into the car, and we're heading off to F&B Stadium. Now, I think you've been to a derby. You know what the traffic is like there. Broadcasting is about time. It's about being there ahead of time so that we all keep the integrity of the broadcast. But we're stuck in traffic with this legend, John Barnes, that everybody knows. They keep phoning us. Hey, where are you guys? We have to go on there in the next 20 minutes. Where are you? Where are you? We can't make headway of the traffic. So John and I decide, you know what, stuff the car, leave it on the side of the pavement. We're going to walk the rest of the journey to F&B Stadium. So John's bought his brand new shoes. I mean, he wants to impress. He's on SuperSport, brand new shoes. I don't know if they were butter toffees or grasshoppers, but he had brand new shoes. And it's a distance. So also it's difficult because between John and myself, but especially John, everyone wants to stop him, take a photo. Hey, John. So now our trip is becoming longer instead of shorter because of the people wanting attention. But eventually we get to the studio. They've had to play a couple of clips before we get there because we are late, technically.
And wasn't John barefoot?
So then, yeah. So John had to take his shoes off. Because, new shoes, leather, and so the legend developed blisters, man. So for the next week, John came to studio wearing slops. So you'd wear, jacket, shirt, tie, slops. But the beautiful thing is it wasn't seen. It was right under the table. So that was one of the fun stories because, again, you take out the human side. And John Barnes, Semi Kufuor, all of the guys that worked with us, till today, are lifetime friends. And when John wrote what he wrote on the back cover of the book, he had just come out of an operation in hospital in the UK. But he said, you know what, as dizzy as I am, I'm going to make sure I write something. People like Peter Drury, world famous. He'll probably be a superstar in the World Cup more than any football player because of his oratory. He is so brilliant at what he does. He does his homework. He was able to say, I'll make time. I'll do that. Semi Kufuor, Doc Kumalo. All of the heroes of the game, contributed and gave a voice. And I'm eternally grateful for that. They were able to do it because it's a celebration of football. And what's football without football players and commentators?
Thank you. Mandy, we'll continue because we're going to field questions from the audience. But just before we do that, Robert, for crying out loud, you are a grandson of a bishop of the Anglican Church, Bishop Alpheus. Now, you say nothing in the book about being an altar boy or even going to church once. What is your relationship with God, and are you a churchgoer?
Mfundisi uyangishaya. Yo, I always say that between going to Little Flower, home, and then eventually at high school, I have been churched out. Little Flower, we would queue outside that church or the chapel at 5 a.m. Queue until there's choop still, silence. You're not allowed in that chapel until everyone was quiet. And come Easter time, we had to know the rosary, we had to recite the rosary, we had to do the stages of the crucifixion, we had to do the 8 Beatitudes, we had to do all of those things. And then I go to an Anglican church, which again, they did the same thing. There were altar boys, though, but remember, in the Catholic school, we only take the body of Christ. Only the priest took the body and the blood of Christ. So the altar boys made sure that they stole the blood of Christ.
So much for the childhood. I'm talking about now. We are sonta Robert normal sonti.
Ziyaduma.
Okay, siyabonga. Ladies and gentlemen, can you give a round of applause for Robert Marawa? And this is November, and somebody said this is the only month that starts with the word no. Now, your life has been characterized by tenacity, grit, and determination. I mean, something has to be said about walking into the canteen at Wits University and you see an advert for continuity announcers at the SABC, and the deadline was yesterday. And this young man looks at this thing and said, yeah, the deadline was yesterday, but I'm going to the SABC. And the rest is history. But there are 3 occasions or 3 requests, propositions, to which you said no. The first one was addressing the centenary celebrations at Hilton College, and your reasons have been clearly articulated. Even this morning when you're speaking to Sakina Kamwendo, you articulated the political reasons around the beef that you had with the institution about how you were treated and how you could not play football, you're not allowed to play football, and how you are mistreated when you try to play rugby. I don't want you to go into that. That has been covered. The second no was in 2007 when you were offered the opportunity to go and anchor the Rugby World Cup in France. And you said no to Rob Rogers, I think it was, who excitedly...
It was Tex, so it was a super sport then.
It was a super sport. And thirdly, it was when Patrice Motsepe asked you to be CEO of Sundowns, and you turned him down. Why?
I told Patrice that I first thanked him for thinking I could be a CEO of a club. But I had to be very honest. I told him I'm a broadcaster. I'm not an administrator. It's as simple as that. Whatever money you were going to give me, I was not going to take it. It did not matter whatever it took. And that is why I've continuously said, you know, time and time again, is that I'd rather starve in dignity than eat in shame. You know, so I'm not saying being an administrator is a shameful act, but why remove me from broadcasting?
Anyway, for more details on that, people can buy the book and they can read for themselves.
Excellent salesmanship, thank you.
Do we have beef with Pitso Msimang?
Did I have?
Beef with Pitso Msimang.
As opposed to chicken or mutton? No, I mean, I saw a write-up that mentioned that. I couldn't write about a story that I don't know. He would have to write it in his book because I don't know about the beef. I just know that there was a person who did not want to be interviewed by me at the end of a game. I knew that we had invited him countless number of times to be on Thursday Night Live and Extra Time on SuperSport, and he turned it down, but he was able to be on Soccer Africa and every other show that was there. So there was a clear indication that I was the problem. But why I was the problem, I don't know. So I couldn't use my memoir to write about a story that I don't know. It is his story, and he'll tell it one day.
Thank you for that response. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Kennedy Temba Marawa, from Nkandla, Woza Woza to Little Flower, Hilton College, Wits University. And throughout all of this time, and throughout his 4 health scares, the first one in 2008, I think it was, which was a heart attack. The next one was in 2017, another heart attack. And then there was one that is very difficult to describe, whether it was a spiritual attack or whatever.
There was a situation.
It's a situation that you can read details about in the book. And then the final one was COVID-19. Throughout all of these issues, and throughout your education, and throughout your development as a broadcaster, and throughout your adult life, your pillar has always been one lady that I wish to recognize tonight, that I wish to acknowledge tonight, Mrs. Lynette Pumlile Marawa. Siyabonga, ma.
Good evening, everybody. I didn't know I would do this, but all the same, I'm in the middle of it. I have the honor of speaking about my dearest and only son on what is a monumental occasion for him, and us as a family. Having gone through this process, I'm proud that Utemba has been to take on challenges that has been encapsulated in this book. Whilst doing so, he has also managed to put the interests and needs of his family first over everything else in his work life and personal life. Being his mother has brought me joy and happiness as he continues to carve out his own legacy day by day, whilst continually holding the Marawa name in such a high regard. I know that his father, Frank, will be proud of the man he has become, and as the leader of the family, he continues to lead from the front with respect and dignity. A message to you, Temba. And then here, I will say, it is so special that you decided to get hold of writing the book before I did. Because mine was always to talk about writing a book one day, but that never happened. And for that, I say congratulations to you and Mandy on doing and being successful to that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mama. Now, let's talk about Martin Locke. It would have been nice if he attended tonight's event, and I have no doubt you tried to get him here because of the role that he played, unknowingly, I must add, in mapping the product that Robert Marawa became, and how you are determined not to imitate him, but to pick up positives out of his body language and how he did his work, which is why when he did the first audition, he could relate to what he saw, because he could see part of himself in this young man who had come in for auditions. Just want to give us a brief relationship and inspiration that you got from Martin Locke.
Yeah, I think as the book describes, there were many situations and scenarios that I couldn't believe were playing themselves out, because what you wish for, yearn for, desire from a distance versus what happens in reality. And Martin Locke was one of those, because when I would watch him do what he does on television, I almost subconsciously said, you know, dude, listen, you're doing what I want to do one day. But I was still young. But I had in the back of my mind the fact that I needed to come to Joburg University to study law because, hey, that's what I promised the parents. I had to do it. But I also never gave up on the dream of being in that studio where Martin Locke was. And as difficult as as it is because I don't know anybody. I'm a newcomer to the city, so I don't have an inside person to say, hey, hook me up. I had no hookup. The only hookup I could have was, what could you do? What could you deliver? Are you quality enough to warrant a place in then the one broadcaster that was the leader in terms of sport, news, actuality, you name it, was the SABC, because sport was not really a super sport thing. That happened much later. But Martin Locke played a massive role, so did Ahmed Rashad, who presented Inside Stuff, the basketball show. So those are the two people that I sort of modeled my journey towards, but never wanting to imitate, but to use them as a yardstick of success.
Did your journey and your impoverished background, in inverted commas, considering that you are still an icon of hope within that Nkandla environment, and having been given opportunities by others, is that what inspired you? And Mandy, you can come in here, because now when you are up there, you always looked for other people that you could pick up. Although the gender was always the fairer gender for most of those people, Melissa Reddy, Julia Stewart, and Tato Moeng, and some of the others. What inspired you to do this? Because you didn't have anybody to pick you up to be where you were.
I think also knowing what struggles females go through, the demands by the so-called superior directors, producers, that they need to give of themselves to pursue the job that they want. And it was important. I mean, it started in 2003. From a cricket perspective, where I'd always known that this individual knows cricket. But she's female, she's of Indian origin, but my goodness, cricket came out of her ears. And when I went to knock on Vuzo Mbebe's door, it was in the light of saying, you know what, I've got somebody that can actually bring to life your broadcast of the 2003 Cricket World Cup. And it was like, who? And that time it's like 10 to 6. I'm supposed to go and do the show. And I'm like, here she is. Introduce each other, and I was gone. So it puts to reason for me, and it's by no coincidence, that two of the ladies are now working within Sky. I'm not saying that I was responsible for that, but the foresight to bring them closer to where the action is, because I remember the comments that were made in my ear when I had both Julia and Melissa on Thursday Night Live, and they were on the couch, and the people in the control room were like, what do these chicks know about football? And now, who's got the last laugh? Kaz Naidu is who I was referring to earlier. Melissa Reddy is at Sky. Julia's doing well. Tato Moeng's doing well. There's I'm sure she's here by now.
Can you give a round of applause for what Robert did in that regard, and ensuring that all of these ladies can be given an opportunity. I'm going to open questions to the floor now. If you could kindly identify yourself. Okay. We don't have any questions. Oh, that's interesting.
I have a testing.
There's a gentleman in the handicap.
Thank you very much. First, I must offer a disclaimer. I am new to the family. I'm married to Uncle Temba's niece, so I have to be careful what questions I ask.
So when you're with your in-laws, you got to tread carefully.
I would like to know from yourself, Uncle Temba. I just quickly skimmed the book and I noticed chapter 10, I think chapter 9 is called Good Fortune or Fate. I'd love to know from yourself or rather, how much of your success you'd say is attributed to your hard work, and how much of your success is attributed to just sheer luck. Thank you.
Welcome to the family. I think that's an important thing to establish, is family. It's a good question. luck can get you so far. Luck can win you a game. Luck won't get you longevity. Tiger Woods is a clear example. Venus, Serena Williams are clear examples. Lewis Hamilton are clear examples. Because at times you've got to fight against all odds. You've got to fight more than about the establishment. You have to fight, as the book says, even politicians. You know, yes, there's might be one in the room today, but I haven't had to fight him. That's, you know, you've had to fight to get somewhere. And when we fought brutally, and I'm glad Thando Manana's here, because when we did the room dividers, it had to do with transformation. And having been at Hilton and seen how difficult it is for you as a black kid to ascend and without being pushed down, we needed to fight that war. And although some of the people that fought against me in the end, and how maybe one lost a job or two within the broadcasting, also came from the rugby and cricket sector. You know, so we mustn't just focus on the football side. They did not like the room dividers. So if I had to ask Yuri Roo as the CEO of rugby to come onto the show, and we were still the room dividers, Yuri would not. And I remember the day I had my heart attack, the Thursday after I was admitted, Yuri Roo was on the show. So it says something about accountability. Because people don't want to account. They don't want to talk about these things. But they're happy when the rugby team, the most transformed team ever, goes to Japan, wins the Rugby World Cup, comes back, and with the predominantly, and for the first time, the most number of players of color were in that team in Japan. So I'll dispel the luck. I will say hard work. Maybe part of why I even had those heart attacks was because I wasn't sleeping enough. I wasn't eating enough. I was probably gaining weight, becoming like a sumo wrestler. And I needed to correct those things. But it was because of the hours I was spending. On the weekend, I would be away in Thohoyandou doing a game. So I'm not watching rugby. But when I come back, I have to then prepare for a rugby show, leave the rugby show, drive to Randburg, and present 5 UEFA Champions League games. 5 games means 10 teams worth of research in one night. You know, and I'm there. There's John Barnes, there's Tim Sherwood, there's all sorts of banner of people that have been flown in, Dwight York from the UK, to analyze the games. So at Supersport, there's no script, there's no auto cue. So everything you're driving is from you. It's from your head, it's from your research. And you have to conduct all of these panel discussions. So definitely hard work. Luck, yeah. Luck if you score. That's the only place where it comes in. Great question, though.
Thank you very much. Before I invite the next question, now that we have him back in the room, shall I then ask Honorable His Excellency Panyaza Lesufi, Premier of the Gauteng Provincial Government, to come and say a few words. Over to you, Premier.
Thank you so much, Program Director, Robert and Wendy. Honored guests, my apologies that I kept you waiting. I'm chairing a cabinet meeting. I thought I was punishing them to have a cabinet meeting at night. I didn't know that still inconvenienced me as well. So apologies on that score. Robert, congratulations, my good brother. This is the first person I met many years ago. I was a tiny spokesperson of a certain department. And when he greeted me, he said, President. And I said, President for what? I'll just accept. I'll call you President. And has been calling me President, and many people joined calling me President. And for that, I'm humbled, Robert. And thank you. Mandy. Mandy was a tough journalist. Since my days as a spokesperson until now. When I enter the studio for the midday show, there are many journalists that you take a conscious decision that me and this one is water and oil, so I will not go to their show. Either we do their shows through telephones or other. But with Mandy, I always ensure that I even go to a studio because I respect her, she respects her profession, And it's not about favors. You want people to be professional. That's it. And she has been like that. And I want to thank you, and thanks for you for this particular project. The irony of this event is that we are celebrating an icon that is not in a traditional media platform as we speak now. And that's what hurts me about Robert. When Robert left SABC, I'm one of those that felt I must pick up the call and call either the board chair or the CEO of the broadcaster and say, you can't let Robert leave the station. And in most instances, it shook those powers that be, that even people like Panyaza are fighting for Robert. What is special about this Robert? And when he left SuperSport, he knows I had to go and meet the CEO of SuperSport at one Lanseria airport and was leaving the country. And I said, you can't do this to Robert. And there was nothing that I was protecting or I was encouraging or defending. Robert is super talented. You can't replace this talent with him. He was doing one show alone. They tried with 3 people or 4. Yeah. So that's the talent that we have as a country. And he knows his trade. He knows his research is super. He's got scorpions, even though they were disbanded in the country. And he knows everything, literally. I mean, before I left Swallows, the chairperson of Swallows is here, and the chair will call me and say, Robert got that story. And I will say, how? And they say, scorpions. And Robert has this thing that when he has this story, he will not even go through the normal channel of communication. He will just call you directly. Can I put you in? and you have to observe the protocols of the team and other things. So I wish you well, my good brother. You enjoy our support, and I'm glad that you put your side of your story in a book form. I'm looking forward in reading the book, and I also want to congratulate everyone that is here to support you. It's an affirmation that indeed you are playing a critical role, not only in our lives, but in our country, and those people that have endorsed our book is an affirmation that we're doing well. But my last praise is to Ma and family. Sabonga mama kakhulu. You have no idea the hero we've created out of Robert. Everyone who listens to radio and watch television will tell you, since Robert left television and radio, there's nothing closer to him, and we'll forever miss him. Good luck and best wishes, my brother.
Sesiyanga semaphethelweni kulabo abalambile nalabo abandlela amaphilisi sesiyanga semaphethelweni cela nje ukuthi mbambe umoya. I joined the chorus that is going to refer to you as President Premier Panyaza. President Panyaza. President. Mandy, you write a book. We know about Mbali Ntembu, Robert's first love. But there's this woman who broke Robert's virginity. And you leave without identifying her for us. That's bad journalism.
So I was saying to Unumvula earlier that I know what's not in the book. So there's stories that did not go in the book because I thought it's better that way.
We will trust
everyone.
your judgment, and we will suppress our Mgosi instincts and we'll leave it in that to protect Robert and to protect Awanda and many others. Maybe some of the things are left unsaid. But thank you very much for unearthing some of those things. You could sense even when you read those chapters that there's a certain level of discomfort in Robert to talk about these issues. Am I correct?
Absolutely correct.
In your next book, but further questions, ladies and gentlemen, as we okay.
I don't know if this mic's on.
Is the mic working?
Is it on? Is it on? Can you hear me?
Great.
Cindy Paluta, Robert Marawa. We've come a long road together. I want to say thank you for always standing up and for being one of the few men in the room who will actually acknowledge that us women in sports broadcasting are often sidelined because we are women. So I want to thank you for that. In our time at Supersport together, you were very vocal to management about how us women were treated in sport. So thank you. My question... Mr. Lesufi said that radio is sadder without you. It is. Just want to say that you haven't come to Prime Media yet, and the door is always open. I'm almost 100% sure they'll find a slot for you. You've already started working with Mandy. There's nothing stopping you on the airwaves. Who is the most exciting or dynamic person you've ever interviewed in your illustrious career?
Thank you for that. Robert.
Cindy. Grata, as I still have her on my phone. I still haven't changed after you got married.
My
Forgive
phone
me.
too.
Are you serious? Oh, man.
Apologies to the husband. Yeah.
No, thanks so much. Wow. What a great broadcaster and sports lover she is. Dynamic. It's probably unfair. I mean, I talk about the Mandela story in the book, so read that one because there's a build-up to why it happened. Sepp Blatter was also, I mean, I don't think we talk about Sepp, but it was clear. I mean, Jerome Valk, who I then established a very good relationship with, he was the Secretary General of FIFA. So thanks to the World Cup 2010, we had done a couple of World Cup draws in Cape Town, the World Cup draw in Durban, when for the first time they took the Soweto Derby and they played at Kings Park. And I asked, because I'm always trying to push the envelope slightly, Cindy, I asked Jerome, like, can I interview Sepp Blatter? And the answer was no. He does press conferences, and that's it. He doesn't grant interviews whatsoever. So I look at Jerome and I say, but Jerome, where are you guys taking this World Cup? Is it not coming to Africa? He was there on the podium, hey, South Africa, Africa to suit. So let him wear his suit and come to the studio. That is where we need him to be. And it took a little bit of convincing, but safe to say, in the same way that Mandela caused a stir when he came to the studio, Sepp Blatter eventually said yes. And for the very first time, the FIFA president was stepping into the cauldron of the SABC. And obviously, it gets all the bosses excited. So you get people that have been in the higher floors. You've never seen them. They've gained complexion. Now they're coming down to meet Sepp Blatter because it's a photo opportunity. You know, and they're there in the holding room and they're having drumsticks and meatballs. And, you know, Sepp Blatter's their friend now. You know. No, but it's a true story. I mean, no one can argue with that. It was the same with Madiba, which was great. I mean, hey, you know, the people own the microphones. I'm just someone who's employed. And it just turned out that in a similar way, Sepp Blatter was a very layered individual, somebody who, you needed time. But he had a dream and a reason as to why the World Cup had to come to Africa. But I also knew that there were scandals about how they fixed these World Cups. And, I mean, there's gazillion and one scandals that have befallen, you know, the FIFA hierarchy. But, hey, the World Cup was coming to South Africa. I had a chance. He was there. And I think in answering your question, he would be the one. But obviously second to the great Madiba.
And the biggest event that you covered or that you anchored?
I think the former president, Thabo Mbeki, and just a couple of weeks ago at UNISA, when I was invited with Dr. Jerry Mofokeng to attend, he actually addressed the graduates and the people that were there, and he started with the story of how when I was asked, and remember, I don't play golf. My dad was the golfer. He was a caddy. He loved Tiger Woods. He wrote to Tiger Woods like he was writing to his son. And they would respond to him as if it was Tiger responding. But you know, these PR people that do that. But he was happy. He would put it up on the wall and, you know. But, you know, so in layering that, I think I described Mandy in the book that I would see these golf sticks, and I didn't know what these things were. I mean, I'm in KZN. They could be traditional weapons. I don't know what golf was. You know, so in the end, I'm asked to go and MC a massive event, the President's Cup in George. President's Cup is America versus the rest of the world. So there's Vijay Singh, there's the young Tiger Woods. Anyone who's a big name in world golf was there. Presidents, there was George Bush Sr., Nelson Mandela, Thabo Mbeki, then the Stellenbosch gang was there. I obviously didn't know who they were. I only saw the pictures like 2 years ago that directly behind me was Johan Rupert. I didn't know then who he was, but yeah, he was there. And I had to address the entire world because it's a competition that is shown right across the world. Maybe that was my toughest assignment due to my lack of golf knowledge, but I did not have to talk about golf. I had to preside over an event, the opening and the closing ceremony in George that had to do with golf and all of these esteemed individuals.
Excellent, excellent. Well done, Robert. I do think also that the 2010 FIFA World Cup draw was one of the bigger events that had possibly the largest audience that you had to appear in front of. And well done to all of that. We'll take two more questions. Mandy, is there anything that you did not know about South African football specifically that you only got to discover after writing this book and interacting with Robert?
Like one thing. There was a lot. There was a lot that I didn't know. And what I really found fascinating was how much institutional memory Robert has. So the way that Robert speaks about the descriptions on radio of the football players that he grew up, and when he was able to go to the stadium for the first time and see the players himself, and know who they are and identify them purely through the descriptions that he had heard from commentators on radio, for me was an incredible thing because it spoke to the power of radio. But I learned a fortune about the history of football in South Africa. And it was also interesting to hear from Robert about why he thinks football is not as good in South Africa as it used to be.
Great stuff. Tebo Mloyi, I saw you pick up a copy of the book. Please go and read it. And you'll discover for the first time, don't just put it on the shelf, and discover for the first time which team Robert Marawa supports in South Africa. He has played neutral all his career until this book where he diverges.
Supported.
Yeah. But I want Tebo to find out after reading the book himself.
Supported.
Supported.
Yeah. So I was open enough to talk about which team I supported.
Oh, so it's not support.
No.
It's supported.
No.
Let's sort out the tense here. So it's not the present continuous. It is the past. Okay.
So my biggest mistake, Doc, was getting into this industry.
We'll sort out the English with Robert at some point. I'll take two more questions before we sign off. The lady. Thank you. Have you got a roving mic next to you? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. My name is Lynette Mahasa. First, congratulations, RM, for the book. We're quite excited. But my question is to Mandy. I just wanted to find out whether in future, is there a chance that we can have an audio book so that one could listen to this book, especially when you're driving? Because I spend a lot of time driving or, something like that.
If you can convince Robert to sit down and narrate the book and to read the book, then it's a done deal. Then we're okay. But if you can get him to be in one location for longer than 2 hours, then you've done better than I have.
Mandy, I saw Silo Magegangube has got a great voice. I'm sure we can get him to do that. I'm sure he comes at a cost, though. He's an expensive guy, that one.
There's a hand at the back.
Ngiyabulala, Gqirha.
Enkosi bhuti.
My name is Steve Kompela.
Mbuyiselo. Yitsho bhuti man, usebenzise igama lakho lika Steve. Yitsho manje Mbuyiselo Kompela waseKroonstad.
Theni xa ndithi Steve Kompela abantu bahleke.
Okay.
By the way, what I was saying is why when I say Steve Kompela people start laughing. Welcome to South Africa. I have a question, and I'm sure it would also require a response from Mandy. Congratulations, Rob. We have the books here. We are going to ask for your autograph before you leave. And we hope that you will definitely do so. Mama, welcome to Johannesburg. Now is this. Rob, tell me, it must have been difficult at some point to say certain things. I want you to direct me to a chapter, a difficult chapter that you had to write at the back of persuasion from Mandy to say, Robert, this must come out, but it doesn't come out the way it is. You still sugarcoating. Something extremely thorny, something that you wouldn't just say with ease, but Mandy pursued you to say.
I think we should see if we agree on this one.
Yes, please.
Because I know which one it is.
I'm waiting.
You go first. No, you go first.
Ladies first. I'm very respectful.
No, Robert, you go first.
See, this is what I had to deal with.
First. No, I'm in charge here. He goes first, please. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Sure. Hi, Steve Kompela. Nice to see you. Always been a fan. So you got to remember that.
Oh.
No. The context. It's been written about and not usually spoken. I'm trying to be Steve Kompela. But anyway, I've never been married, but I've been engaged. So delving into a relationship where it led to an engagement and then talking about the kind of relationship that it was. And I'm not talking to a tabloid person. I'm talking to someone who's writing about my thoughts, my feelings. That's when she had to grill me as far as getting the feelings out. And I'm glad. Because remember, when you engage, Steve, you're quarter to getting married. And the person that I was quarter to getting married to is here tonight. And I thank her for that, because if people relied on tabloids, they would think that there was bad blood. But there was never bad blood, because when she was in the height of doing her biggest assignment in New York, she was able to visit us as a family and visit my dad in hospital. So you can't have bad blood with somebody that you've shared a greater part of your 3 years with. But it was initially difficult to talk about it because I'd never been there in terms of expressing it publicly. So I do thank Ms. Tusi for being here. And I do thank her for having to, take all my nonsense. So I hope we're on the same track.
So, yes, it was definitely that chapter. That was a great question. And I also just want to add to it, as hard as it was for me to get Robert to speak about it, I think the reason that it was so hard is because he was very mindful of maintaining the dignity and respect of Pearl, is that he was so mindful that he didn't want to say anything negative. So I did really, really have to push him on that. And it was a difficult thing to do because I didn't want to be that tabloid journalist either. And I think the chapter really comes out for the better of it.
Yeah, I think in the end, just to summarize it, that it's not a difficult story to tell. It was just a difficult story for me to let go of from myself. But otherwise, it was a beautiful 3 years.
Final question, Robert, and I'm being self-indulgent here. I'm not going to be program director at a book launch of Trimshelele, the Robert Marawa story again. So it's good. This is the first and the last time. You talk about Cyril Bongani Mkhulu, Kansas City, the legendary Radio Solo, or Yomsakazo Africa, who inspired you. And up to a point where you're inspired to be on radio, but you're somehow scared and you never thought it was possible. Until one afternoon, a certain Romeo Khumalo gave you a call and gave you an opportunity to be on Metro. Fast forward to a point where you are now a household name. We have Marawa Sports Worldwide and many other programs that you had. You work with Mario Sanyani, and you really go out there and get listened to by millions and millions of South Africans. And within that success, things begin to change. And I put it to you that having cancers as your inspiration, working on radio, and focusing on sport, and focusing on football, what happens in the field, became your success. As soon as you got onto the talk side of radio, and you started challenging authority, and started getting into administration issues and what it is to be behind what happens when the players trot onto the field, trouble began. And today you are out of SABC, you are out of SuperSport, you are out of everything, as the Premier has said. Sadly so, because you began to delve out of that comfort zone and started challenging authority. Am I correct?
No, 100%. And that is why when I made the correction of that I supported, it goes along with that. Is that my support ended the minute my eyes opened up to a lot of things that happened behind the scenes. So I was not going to waste away my emotions based on that, because I was just a lover of football. The politics was important to bring to the fore. And why I say this, I think Cindy was recruiting me to Prime Media, but John Robbie, I found 702 by mistake. I got to Joburg, I was looking for Radio Bob. So Radio Bob was on medium wave, 540. So I was trying to get to 540, and then in the middle of that, I hear these people quarreling at like 9:30 at night. They're fighting.
Oh, it was talk at 10.
Yes. And they're there, and there's arguments back and forth. So I stop, and I'm like, hey, this form of radio, are these people okay? What's going on here? You know, because I'd never heard of that. I'd just been Radio Zulu, nice time. They're playing music. At times, hey, Zabashonile, so all of those things, that's what I'm used to. Now all of a sudden, I'm hearing people fighting. And remember, and that's why I argued with people that started to look at John Robbie as a racist. I'm like, guys, you don't know what John Robbie had to go through around 94. John Robbie was being called by a majority of white South Africans who phoned the radio station. It was being called the Kafur Puti. You know, so people that know the history of apartheid and what being a Kafur Puti is, that was what he was being called, because he was embracing transformation. He was embracing the new order. He was embracing what was happening. So I was fascinated by this form of radio. So yes, I can talk about the game. We can analyze how great Jabulo Blom was and pocketing a couple of players over the weekend. That is what we see. But what is it that we don't see? Became the issue. What don't we see in cricket, in rugby, in football? So that's when I then joined for the very first time, and I got to put it on record. Yes, I joined the unemployment queue, being fired at SABC and SuperSport in the same manner. But I was grateful. I know it's not easy to say you're grateful for being fired. I was grateful because it gave me for the very first time an opportunity to be at home for 2 months, to spend time with family, to sit across an 85-year-old lady that from the time I was 5 years old attending boarding school, I had not had that amount of time in the same house as her. So it afforded me that, and I was okay with that. So my unemployment job-wise was my enrichment family-wise.
Thank you for that. And my final question is based on what is written page 321 of the book, which says, and I quote, "I want to challenge myself outside the borders of South Africa. Are we likely to lose Robert Marawa to the USA, the UK. Does the world pick on for Robert Marawa?
I don't think it will be a loss. You didn't lose Trevor Noah, you gained. You didn't lose to Sombedu, you gained. It's a continuation. I think people don't celebrate Ladysmith Black Mambazo enough for the Grammys they won.
But to the autograph chasers, we are lost, but they're fine. That's the point that I'm trying to make.
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree with you, Doc. For me, it's always a gain because it means that we've worked hard enough to gain international recognition.
Robert, uyahamba yaphesheya mfethu noma sisazohlala nawe.
Uzongorganizele Home Affairs visa.
Thank you so much for your response. One more round of applause for Robert Marawa, please. As we conclude, we're getting into the festive season. South Africans who are lazy to think about thoughtful presents want to buy books, and we want this book to be positioned out there, exclusive books and many other outlets for people to buy Robert Marawa's book. Why should anybody buy this book as a present for themselves or for a present for anybody? Mandy Weiner, the author.
Look, exactly as Robert explains, the book appeals to everyone. From the people in the extra strongs to the people in the suites, somebody will get something out of it. And that's because Robert appeals to every aspect of South African. So for me, it's interesting in terms of how he came to be, the broadcasting story, but then the backstory also. And I think the one thing we haven't spoken tonight is your son. And I think it's important for young people as well, for this book to live for posterity, to tell the story for those younger generations as well that want to aspire to be like Robert one day.
Thank you very much, Mandy, and I take this opportunity to thank Mr. Robert Kennedy Temba Marawa for having availed yourself and having answered all the difficult, the easy questions, letting us into your life through this book and through this evening's engagement. Thank you very much for being part of this. Thank you to Mandy Weiner for the idea and for not seeing the conception but up to the birth of the idea and the nourishing of the idea into adulthood. Thank you very much and all the very best in the sales of the book. I also take the opportunity to thank the publishers and to thank each and every one of you for having attended this event. Not only for gracing the occasion tonight, but ukuzizalela lensizwa, ukuzizalela lelinqhawe esihlangane ngalo namhlanje. It's not only about giving birth, but it's also about nurturing and being able to raise him up pretty much remote control. He went to boarding school at 5, but he still managed to be a young man who clearly okhuliswa ngendlela eqotho, okundiswa ngemthetho obonayo ukuthi ubuya ekhayeni eliqinile ngempela. Thank you very much for having done that and showing that taking children to boarding school at a young age can still work. He talks a lot about how you came to school, umvakashela umlethela ukudla, and just the support that you gave, both at Eshowe, a Little Flower, nase boarding school, nala ekade khona eMaritzburg school. And thank you for all the way and even supporting him today. But thanking also for supporting him through his 4 major health scares and challenges, very difficult times, praying for him, supporting him physically and in any other way. Thank you very much. Siyabonga inkosi uqine. Sibonge kudadewethu unomvula naye iqhaza olibambile ukuthi Robert abe lo muntu esimbonayo namhlanje. Thank you for everything that you have done. He talks so fondly in the book about the support that you gave him and how you barged into Follarding ICU in Charlotte Maxeke Academic Hospital, wanting to know from the nurses, indicating, pulling rank and telling them that you are a nurse, they must allow you in. But also supporting him throughout the journey, even in raising up his young men, Indlela. Thank you very much, and thank you for all the organization and everything that happened today. Thank you for everybody that came today, gracing the occasion, the organizers and everybody else. Let's enjoy the rest of the evening. Let's go out there and buy the book.
Rocks walks the talk, but also his ability to bounce back. I think there's a lot we can learn from that, because you are never done with him. But it's what we learn from that experience because it's his God-given experience. I thank God for having him as my father, and may he continue to rise and shine. Thank you.
And I don't think he's celebrated enough. I think he's an icon in football, and I think he's well respected. And we know that in a game of football, respect is earned. And I think he's earned so much respect from everybody else. And to see so many prominent people in the same place, that shows you that Robert touched so many people just with sports. And for me, personally, I just want to thank him for everything that he's done for me.
Congratulations, my brother. You've done so much for South African sports. And I believe this is first of many books to come from you.
We were reminiscing about our first meeting when you came to play the Doctor on Generations. And from then on, my brother, you just went on and just went in leaps and bounds. And it has been such a journey. I can only but wish you all the best. And
Grim Shelele.
Grim Shelele.
Grim, you'll do the rest.